In this video, we're going to talk about how you can win 1v2s, 1v3s, and have consistent killing sprees, allowing you to take control of games and consistently winning them over and over again. So if you want to climb to Onyx and beyond, make sure you watch to the end. But the GameLeap website is an additional resource that we have for you with in-depth tips and tricks, strategy courses where we break down the decision making and everything that you need in order to dominate your opposition. Do yourself a favor and go check it out right now down below. Now, it's actually kicked off on the Discord where someone DM'd me a question. So we're going to read his question. I'm going to talk about my response and then I'm going to extrapolate on that idea. So, quote from Beetlebottom, he said this: I have a question for Coach Mills. I have been watching a ton of your videos here and all of your tips always end with the kill. What happens post-kill? Whether I win a 1v1 or double kill on a 1v2, I am most often walking away with very low or no shields. Of course, I'm using my health advantage, but post-fight, I'm left so vulnerable. What are the best tips and tricks to keep your momentum going and turn kills into killing sprees? I would love to see a video on post-kill tactics. Now, this was my short response. Good video idea. The basic premise is to 1. Take isolated fights and not commit to unknown potential 1v2s. 2. Position in places that have easy exit cover, high ground, corners, etc. I'm gonna basically break both of those down more in a second. And 3, play to get the most out of your life. Sometimes you can't actually get more kills, but you can make it harder for enemies to finish you. Tucking, for example, forces an enemy to walk far into the open to finish you, means that it's easier for a teammate to get that kill. And there's a lot more concepts, but this was my general summary, but I did acknowledge that I wanted to turn this into a full video, hence where we're at right now. Now let's actually talk about my first response, because his original question is what does he do post-kill? After he's getting that one kill or maybe even that second kill, he's super weak and he feels like he can never extend his life further and get those killing sprees, and he always gets killed when he's very low. Now, I say take isolated fights and not commit to unknown potential 1v2s. So ideally here, you want to take a fight with someone where you are going to be the only person shooting at them, or you have a teammate with you, so both of you are shooting at someone. You don't want to take a fight where you start shooting at them and the entire fucking posse pops out from behind them, right? And you have to ask the question, how do you ensure that the person you're going to fight is going to be the only person you fight? How do you make sure that you're in a true 1v1? Well, the best way to do this is typically with information. Oftentimes, when enemies are running around the map, they actually spawn in very similar locations. However, they're going to want to route a little bit differently depending on what objectives they're going for, and there will often be certain items and certain things along the map that will cause a team to split up even when they're all trying to eventually get to the same objective. They're going to split up for items and power weapons and to get different angles on the enemy. A great way to take an isolated fight is to actually let certain people pass. Now, I know I talk about dealing damage to everyone you can, and oftentimes this can be good when you're trying to put giant amounts of pressure on the board. But if you're trying to play for a pick or you're playing in a very risky, isolated situation, you don't want to just start putting out pressure because then you're isolated, then a whole bunch of people are going to turn on you and then you're going to die, right? Ideally, you would let a certain amount of enemies push towards wherever objective they're trying to go to. And when an enemy falls behind, the last person, this person's lagging behind, you can actually surgically attack that person. You get an isolated 1v1 and it's going to be a lot easier for you to get that kill because that person is not anticipating that you're there ready to shoot at them when their allies just went through the same space and didn't get shot at. Now, that's a little bit more of a niche scenario. The more common way or the more reliable way to get 1v1s is to assume that you're never going to get them. And you might be asking, okay, what the hell do you mean by that? Well, if you position in ways where you're near natural cover, you're near corners, and you're peeking down slightly longer sight lines or sight lines where enemies have to turn the corner, then if an enemy is there, you get to shoot at them, you get to fight them. But the millisecond a second enemy enters the fray, you have the means to escape, and you will escape right away. You're not committing to any duel. In fact, even that first duel, if you start to lose it, you have an option to run around the corner, to dip off the high ground, to slide to a cubby that wraps around and gives you an out of some sort, right? This allows you to be flexible. So you're basically engaging from an enemy to slightly mid to maybe even a little bit further away ranges, and you're trying to catch them during their transitionary period around corners. So if you get them to one shot, you can actually chase them and commit to them, and it's harder for them to disengage if they fly around the corner, but you're still giving yourself the flexibility to where you start shooting at them and 2 other people pop around that corner, you can instantly dip, and you have to dip instantly, and you have to be ready to. This basically gives you the ability to not only fight a 1v1 and win it, but if the second enemy pops up right after that, you're still in a good position to run away just like that. The next thing that you need to understand is that it's a lot easier to actually kill an enemy or turn the tables on an enemy if you are trying to run away and that's all you're trying to do. So as an example, let's say you're playing that corner and you're shooting at an enemy and you shot them a couple of times and then you actually want to finish them off. They're starting to back up, so you run out a little bit, you finish them off, but right as you finish them off, their ally joins the fray, right? And you're about half shield, so you don't want to fight this guy because he's full, you're half, and he's probably going to shoot you first. If you beeline and cut corners incredibly tightly and try to run away from him, he's probably going to be able to chase you somewhat, but it's going to be pretty hard for him to decide whether or not to keep sprinting or to stop and shoot at you, because if he stops and shoots at you, he's going to slow down slightly and you might be able to get away from him. In addition to that, if you can run away where there is tight doorways and corridors, you can directly punish him with defensive grenades, allowing you to not only potentially throw grenades at choke points, but turn and fire at him. Even if you're low, means that you have the capability of turning that matchup instantly if he gets far too aggressive and just tunnel visions on chasing you. Basically, you need to understand 2 things. 1, your win condition is just getting away. You do not have to kill this enemy in order to quote unquote win, because you already got that 1 kill on the table with no kills back towards your team. So that's net positive. If you can get away, you need to consider that a win. Now the enemy knows this, and the enemy wants to make sure to get that kill back and trade the value that their ally did get. But if they play too hard into that, if they want it too desperately and push into aggressively to try to 100% confirm you, they could, 1, run into those grenade traps that we talked about, run into turnaround traps with things like the mangler and the sniper or the shock rifle, and the list goes on, or if you kite back fast enough, your allies can come in and bail you out as well, or a duo partner. So you have a lot of ways to essentially turn that over aggression into a win. You don't have to kill them in order to quote unquote win the fight and keep your kill streak alive. And understanding both those things allows you to make a lot better decisions. You need to think about it like, hey, I already got my value in, let me live to fight another day, let me pursue the win condition of running away. And once I run away, once I either punish this enemy for chasing me too aggressively or they stop chasing me, then I can heal up, I can regroup, and I can go try to make another play, set up in another strong location, and do the same thing again and again to either apply pressure or push slowly towards the objective and win more 1v1s overall. Now, I talked about how to take isolated fights, and I talked about how to actually escape fights and either turn them or survive. But the last thing that you need to understand, and this is very important to recognize when it's true and play for it, is there is going to be situations where you will not be able to get out with your life. Whether there's multiple enemies, or maybe you killed one enemy and you're tucked in a corner and you can't possibly go to safety because multiple enemies are looking towards your path to safety. But if you're tucked in, enemies are gonna swing you, you know you're gonna die, and there's really very little you can do. Now, you can always play around with your grenades, try to get some tricky grenades to punish enemies from pushing in, but sometimes the best thing that you can do is tuck in and make yourself as difficult for the enemy to clear as possible. I referenced this in the question when I responded to him, but essentially what you're doing here is getting the most value out of your life even though you know you're gonna die. What this actually does is it creates value even in death. And maybe you got one kill, but in order for the enemy to trade out with you, they had to push out jointly in a way that cemented them to your teammates' fire. And y'all ended up killing the entire enemy team for you and maybe one other person's life. So you actually have a 2-kill advantage because of the way you played. However, if you're 1 HP, you know the enemies are about to swing you and you're like, all right, fuck it, what do I have to lose? And you swing out, allowing the enemy to just kill you from their covered position rather than chasing out into the open to finish you off. Now they get to run away, and their win condition is getting away in the same situation we talked about before. So you have to understand that forcing enemies into uncomfortable situations even if you know you're gonna die, is a way that you can give and bring exponential value to your team. And it's really gonna be important to identify when this is true or not. Communication is king, right? Your teammates can often say, hey, we can cover you, hey, we can hold for you, you can play for your life, you can deal damage, you can just tuck, whatever the case may be. The communication is not always gonna be there, but it is important to try to constantly think about where enemies are relative to your teammates, and think about how the enemies have to play in order to push you, and what opportunities does that create for your team. What LOS or line of sight is the enemy gonna have to cross through in order to get to you, etc, etc. These types of things really can like improve your understanding of the battlefield as a whole, and I think it's gonna allow you to get much more value out of a single life every single game. Not only are you gonna get more killing sprees, but you're just gonna win more team fights. But if you have any big questions, definitely let me know down below. And the GameLeap website extrapolates on ideas like this in much more detail with advanced strategy guides, tips and tricks, matchups, and so much more. We got it all on the GameLeap website, so do yourself a favor and go check it out right now.